Oh, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear colleagues. Thank you for joining this event. My name is Yongyi Min. I'm the Chief of SDG Monitoring Section at the UN Statistical Division. So we're delighted to have you with us for a side event of the 54th session of the UN Statistical Commission, focusing on supporting evidence-based voluntary national reviews. The voluntary national reviews are essential aspect of the review process for the 2030 agenda. And this year, 41 countries will present their voluntary national review during the high-level political forum on sustainable development in July. All but 2 are presenting for a second or subsequent time. The VNR are prepared through a country-led process and should be supported by high-quality data and statistics to ensure that the review is evidence-based. Since 2016, the inclusion of data and progress assessment in VNRs has improved as countries have strengthened their monitoring framework for the SDGs. However, countries are still facing challenges in SDG monitoring, particularly with impact from the COVID-19 and other global shocks and crises and disruptions. These challenges lead to limited data availability, lack of timely or disaggregated data, or other human and financial constraints. Encouragingly, country has taken measures to strengthen their national statistical capacities, including through new technologies, using innovations, using non-traditional data sources, and establishing new partnerships. So this side event will include introduction to a UNDESA guidelines aimed to support country in the preparation of evidence-based VNRs. We will also hear from 3 countries presenting their VNR this year on how they're deepening the data analysis and their good practices for improving data to support SDG implementation and the VNRs. So before we begin, a few housekeeping items. So microphones has been disabled so no one accidentally unmute themselves. So please submit any comments or questions on the chat window. We'll try to address as many of them as possible. So either by chat or orally. So except for the panelists, kindly turn off your cameras. So this will reduce the bandwidth used and perhaps lead to a better sound quality. So this event is being streamed live on YouTube and is being recorded. So the recording and any presentation slides used will be available on the event page soon after the event. So without further ado, we will start with the presentation from USD and on a short introduction to the practical guide for evidence-based VNR. So I would like to invite my colleague, Heather Page, to give you an overview of the practical guide. Over to you, Heather.
Thank you so much, Youngyi. Hi, my name is Heather Page. I'm also with the SDG monitoring section with Youngyi, and I'm really delighted to be here today to give a kind of a quick introduction to the practical guide for evidence-based VNRs and our VNR data roadmap approach. As many of you, and we can go to the next slide, thank you so much. As many of you know, and as Youngyi just mentioned, one of the critical follow-up and review mechanisms for the 2030 agenda are the voluntary national reviews, the VNRs by member states. And these VNRs are prepared through a country-led process, and they facilitate the sharing of experiences, both successes and challenges among member states, to accelerate the implementation of the 2030 agenda. And also, as Youngyi mentioned, the vast majority of countries have presented a VNR at least once, and for this cohort in 2023, 39 out of the 41 will actually be presenting for a second or a subsequent time. And also, as Youngie mentioned, meaningful assessment of progress on the SDGs should be supported by high quality data and statistics to ensure the review is evidence-based. And for instance, in the 2022 VNRs, the countries highlighted not only the increasingly important role of data and statistics for evidence-based policymaking, but also documented their progress in progressively monitoring more of the indicators and the cross-cutting issues throughout the SDG agenda. And here we just kind of have a graph that provides a quick overview of those different data elements that are being incorporated in VNRs and kind of how there's been an uptick in their incorporation. So including progress charts, statistical annexes, reviews of data availability and data gaps, and things like that. So next slide, please. So this guide is a complementary resource for countries because they do have additional handbooks and guides for the development of the VNR, but this one is particularly focused on data and how to use data and statistics on SDGs to support an evidence-based VNR. It also uses a roadmap approach with good practice examples, suggesting key stages in the national VNR process to enhance the use of data. And apart from the roadmap, which is the majority of the guide, there are also some additional sections that I just want to highlight on data disaggregation and leaving no one behind, data and statistics guiding principles, and also SDG data reporting frameworks. And throughout the VNR process, we've found that this really can help to identify strengths and weaknesses of statistical systems and also to help identify statistical capacity building opportunities. The advanced version was made available in October. Here we have the web page, but we will also be providing a finalized version in the coming months, or shortly. Next slide, please. So here is our quick overview of the roadmap approach. And it really, it uses immediate stages for sourcing reliable data to report indicators and statistics in the VNRs. And it has a much shorter timeline compared to a national SDG data strategy or a national SDG data roadmap. And so here we have developed this roadmap for VNR countries essentially from October, taking them through July, through the presentation, and then a little bit beyond to a bit of that post-analysis. And it provides a sequence of steps that countries can undertake, but it will not likely reflect every country's experience, considering there are myriad approaches to collecting and processing SDG data, different tools and collaborations and ways that countries engage in this process and the SDG monitoring on a yearly basis or on an ongoing basis. And then kind of fitting in the VNR to that. And I just want to also note that the roadmap approach, it's premised on the use of the national SDG indicator framework, which is based on national priorities and development plans, in order to have this one nationally agreed indicator and data framework that stakeholders can all get around. So next, so we just very quickly, due to time, I'll just give very quick update or highlights about what we're including in each section. And in our first section on step one, preparation and planning, next slide. Most roadmaps begin with an assessment of needs, and our first stage recommended in the data roadmap is no different. And this preparation and planning really aims to ensure sufficient time and resources are available to prepare the necessary data and develop the content utilizing an inclusive and participatory process. And in this chapter or step, we really kind of highlight the establishment of the VNR data team and really the essential role of the NSOs to really have a key role in the VNR preparation, given their overall importance for SDG monitoring in country. And then also we highlight before beginning data inventories, having a data stage where countries assess their existing data institutions as well as their SDG processes. And then also looking at building on existing reporting processes in country. Next slide, please. So moving on to step 2 in our data assessment. Next slide. A full data assessment stage will ensure that VNRs are informed by a wide array of data sources and that key data holding institutions are not overlooked. And countries can utilize kind of a data ecosystem approach for mapping and consultation, which can also help to show processes and linkages with all actors in data collection and data use. And then here we also just want to highlight the importance of engagement between and close collaboration between NSOs and policymakers, not only to have a data-informed VNR, but also one that accurately reflects the national progress monitoring, but also policy priorities. And then this stage also focuses on a data mapping exercise to really identify those gaps and data availability. So next slide, please. We would move into step 3, or our data collection or data compilation stage. And this stage really focuses on the compilation of existing data, perhaps starting with traditional data sources and then followed by filling gaps with non-traditional and innovative data sources. And this chapter really kind of just, this step really just kind of goes through a bunch of the different considerations for the data collection and also ensuring the quality of non-traditional data, also including the use of new and emerging challenges and the data collection that countries have undertaken regarding COVID-19, climate change, conflicts, and how that is also impacting the SDG agenda. And then lastly, we have data, the data analysis piece, which the data analysis included in the report will really reflect kind of the format chosen in the VNR, either by key theme or by goal or by targets. And we really recommend that the analysis should reference to the trend for the SDGs, and if possible, really encourage further analysis based on the data for interconnections among the SDGs, systems analysis in country, as well as policies and compounding deprivations to really further examine the leaving no one behind. Next slide, please. So moving on to step 4, I'm trying to go very quickly because I only have about 2 more minutes. So preparing the narrative of the VNR will really stem from the results of that data analysis previously carried out. And in this step, we really tried to provide some resources and things to consider for the incorporation of data in the VNR. Really looking at potential ways of data storytelling, really trying to get beyond just what, but the so what and the why, and also tools for data visualization, how to incorporate some of those other elements to really give a summary piece that kind of a snapshot so that users can also really understand the data and the information behind the messages. And then also just considerations for progress charts, possible methodologies, statistical annexes, and then the potential use and incorporation of data platforms. And data platforms obviously can be used in all of the different steps throughout the VNR process and through the data roadmap, but just a quick mention for them here. And then my last step, step 5, is the step 5, and then moving on to the next is our presentation and post-analysis. And this is really just how can we have some final considerations for bringing that data even into the presentation. And then that post-analysis of really looking at our sustainable data goals, as we call it, ensuring a really thorough review of the data process for improving coordination, but also identifying potential capacity building opportunities. And one of my last slides here, I just want to mention we also, next slide, is different considerations for deepening the data analysis in the VNR. Since the VNRs are being presented by countries for a second or subsequent time, it really is an opportunity to deepen the data analysis, looking at intersecting vulnerabilities, analyzing how well SDG policies have worked, who is benefited, who is still being left behind, looking at the interconnectedness of the SDGs, also looking back at those first VNRs, at the data recommendations that were provided, and how is that being brought into your subsequent VNRs, and how much progress has been made and what challenges still remain. And then, and luckily we have 3 countries today who will provide us a bit more information about how they are progressing in these considerations as well. And just my last slide, sorry, I just want to mention we do have some next steps, obviously, in the guide. We're trying to finalize the guide with a couple more examples and a couple areas where we would like to provide a little bit more information. We're also developing guiding questions for each step to really try to help develop these roadmaps. And then also we are looking for examples of country VNR data roadmaps. So we'd love to hear from you. If you have any feedback on the guide or any examples you'd like to provide, we're very, very interested in those. And I just want to mention that in the rest of my presentation, I've included some additional resources. We have resources on our webpage, but in addition, some additional resources for VNRs, as well as some good practices. So this presentation will also be online for your further perusal. So thank you so much, and apologies for going a little bit over.
Yeah, thank you so much, Heather. And I think we still have time. You're okay. And let me see if there's any question directly for you on this presentation. If you have any question for Heather, you can type it now, or we can leave for later. As Heather mentioned, we will continue to improve the guidance. Currently, we have this advanced version on the website, and we'll add a couple of chapters and some good practice. And also, hopefully, we will develop some e-learnings with partners. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'll move on to our next presenters. Who is Catherine Michaud from Statistical Canada. Catherine is the Chief Advisor of International Relations and Sustainable Development Goals. Catherine will focus on their SDG progress assessments as well as other good practice and national experiences on improving data to support the SDGs and the VNRs. The floor is yours, Catherine.
Thank you, Youngti. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm very happy to be here today to talk to you about Canada's experience in writing VNR. In Canada, we have two frameworks to monitor the SDGs. We have the Global Indicator Framework, of course, and we also developed a domestic framework that focuses on Canadian priorities, and that is a complement to the global framework. Next slide, please. So like I mentioned, today I will talk to you about the process for writing a VNR in Canada. And also I will present to you a new progress measure that we developed to help in our reporting. Next slide, please. So we wrote our first VNR in 2018. It was written by Policy Department. At the time, the statistical annex was only a table. This year, we're making things a little bit different. It's still going to be a policy department initiative. Policy department have been assigned the lead on a specific goal, and they will be responsible for drafting that section of the report in the VNR. They will include indicators from both frameworks, the global and the Canadian one, and even more. They have their own set of measures that will help them track progress on their respective fields. There will be a bigger involvement from Statistics Canada. We will be responsible for writing the statistical annex, and we will provide context beyond the data, not just a table like you will see at the end of my presentation. We also developed a progress measure to provide an objective measure of progress in Canada, and we will review the whole document with a statistical lens. Next slide, please. The exciting part of my presentation is, of course, the progress measure. So what are we exactly trying to measure? Let's look at the chart together. We start in 2015, the beginning of the agenda, and we have data up to 2022, the last year, the last complete year to have annual data. We have the target represented by the star in 2030. So we calculate the growth that we observe from 2015 to 2022. And then we calculate the growth that we would need to reach that target from 2015 to 2030. And then we can assess, assuming the same trend that is represented by the dashed line, are we going to reach that target? And we do that by taking the ratio of the two and matching it to a threshold that I will show in next slide. If we can go to the next slide, please. So what do we do if we don't have any quantitative target? It's okay. We know which direction we want to go. Based on the target, we know if we want our indicator to go up or down. So we can measure that too. In this case, we're not going to measure the progress from 2015 to 2022, but from 2021 to 2022, and we will compare it to a predetermined threshold represented by the dashed gray line here, and we've set that threshold at plus or minus 1%, depending on which direction we want to go. So in this case, if we look between 2021 and 2022, we want the growth to be at least equivalent to the blue arrow. And we see in the chart that growth is above that threshold, which would indicate good progress. So in both situations, with or without a quantitative target, we're left with a number. And numbers are not always the easiest to interpret. So to make it easy, we assign a category that we can see on the right side of the slide and a symbol. So did we achieve the target? Did we do good, less good progress, or even deterioration? And we have the symbol that is going with it. Of course, these measures, we can also use them at a goal level. So we transform these numbers, the ratio or the growth, into a score, and then we can average the score to have a goal level assessment of progress. Next slide, please. So to make this measure really, really valuable, what we've decided to do is to contact the OpenSDG team and work with them to introduce that measure into the backend of the OpenSDG software. So we can see on the left hand the goal page. So for each indicator for which we can calculate progress, we have the label and the icon that goes with the progress. For example, indicator 3.1.1, maternal mortality rate, we see that in Canada, we have achieved that target. We've also added, and this was added with Paint, it's not yet a functionality that would be available in OpenSDG, but we've added the goal level progress just for indication. So we see that for goal 3 in Canada, currently, we show moderate progress. On the right side of the slide, we can see the indicator page, and again, showed by the big green arrow, we can see the progress label and icon. Next slide, please. So this is a visual that we recently developed. We wanted to have one image that show all of the progress in Canada. This one, we can see there's not a lot of bars. It represents the Canadian indicator framework, not the global indicator framework. And it shows progress since 2015. So if we look at the circle together, we can see a gray circle around the middle of the chart. This represents the status quo. No change, no progress, no deterioration. From that line, the further we go outside, toward the outside, the better the progress we have. And we can see that for one, at about 12 o'clock, we can see the star, which means that for this indicator, we've actually reached the target. At the opposite, the closer toward the center that we go, the worse off we've been since 2015, and actually shows deterioration for these indicators. We've also added a dashed line that shows the goal level progress. So if we look at around 6 o'clock for goal 9, we can see that at the goal level aggregate, we have moderate progress for goal 9 currently. Next slide, please. Finally, how does that translate into the VNR? Well, it brings an objective measure of progress that will be included at least in the statistical annex and hopefully throughout the text written by the policy department. On the right side, your vision is perfect. It is blurry. It's an unpublished text, so we blurred it a little bit so you cannot read, but you can get the feel of what the statistical annex will have. So this represents a page for a goal, a typical page for a goal. So our statistical annex will have an overview, a statistical profile of Canada, an update on Canada's reporting. Have we improved the number of indicators for which we report on? And an highlight for each goal, where we'll do a short in-depth analysis for 2 indicators. We'll provide disaggregation for relevant events or for specific population, and will include a chart and the progress measure that we can see in the little blocks, the little box that is surrounded by a black line. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. If you have any question, I'd be happy to answer them now, or you can also contact me. My email is provided in the deck. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. This is an excellent example of how country assess progress and also present the data and make it very easy to understand for the users on the progress. Let's see. If any immediate questions, there's one question I think maybe can be for both Heather and Catherine. They said, how can a VOPE help, which is a voluntary organization for professional evaluations? So basically, I think this relates to the other question, how your evaluator can help with the voluntary national review. Catherine, you want to go ahead? Or?
I'm not familiar with what did you say VOPE means?
VOPE is I think it's a voluntary organization of professional evaluator of evaluations. Voluntary organizations for professional evaluations.
I'm not familiar. Is it some type of auditing or just Statistics Canada is a specialist in statistical information. Oh, Association Society. I don't know what that is. I'm sorry.
Heather, you have any comments on this?
Sorry, I wasn't actually familiar with it either. So I'd be happy to talk to you about what that is and how they're engaged potentially with the National Statistical Offices. I haven't seen any examples necessarily of VOPEs, but there are definitely other networks and other evaluation groups, I think, are involved, depending on the country, in some VNRs. So thank you.
Thank you. And I think there's a question, probably for Catherine. Have you identified a target to be achieved for each indicator or target level?
So we've looked at all the targets, and a significant amount of them have a quantitative target, so we use that. If it says, for example, eradicate, we assume that the target is 0. For the targets that don't have a specific quantitative number, we still know the direction we want to go. And based on the direction and the speed or the how fast we go toward that direction, we assign a progress category. So for example, our threshold is at 1%. If our growth is 1%, we'll have moderate progress. If our growth is 5%, we'll have substantial progress. But we won't achieve the target if there's no specific quantitative target.
Thank you. I see there's a hand up from Adam. I don't know if we can unmute him.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm trying. All right, yeah, this is Adam. I'm now currently working.
Can you speak up a little bit louder? I think I cannot hear you so well.
All right. My name is Adam. I'm currently with UNSC. I have a question for Canada. So, in your analysis, the progress. So, how far did you take into account the impact of people? There will be a kind of pre-COVID progress rate of progress might not be after COVID. May also depend on the rate of recovery from COVID. So, how far did you take that into account in your analysis? Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. I think if I catch your question correctly, the impact of, have you taken into account the COVID impact to the progress?
Yes, correct. Yeah, when they are projecting to 2030, so how far COVID impact was taken into account? Thank you.
Yeah, thank
The
you.
methodology does not allow for specific event to be considered like that, but like you've seen in one of the slides, we show the progress with the chart, so we can see if there's a bump or a reverse bump, and if that is toward the COVID year. We've tried to, in analytical pieces that we've written, for example, the infographics that we release, we try to include if we think that significant progress was due to COVID, we'll include it, or the reverse. So if significant deterioration was due to COVID, we'll include it, but the methodology cannot account for it right now.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for answering the questions. Let me see. Okay, there's another question from Heather. So, do you provide a technical notes to explain the methodology for the progress chart that are online?
We are working. We're hoping to be able to release this functionality into OpenSDG. It will be available for everyone to use. And with it, we'll provide a full methodology document as well as instruction on how to include this functionality in your own OpenSDG platform.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. There's another question from Lydia saying they have a database in training stage for up to 16 countries in Latin America. Do you think we can work together? I guess, Lydia, maybe we can talk, you contact this after the webinar and to explore the possibility. Okay. I think then we will move on to the next presenter. Thank you so much, Catherine. So our next presenter is Mr. Jim Bosco, and they is Senga. Sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. From the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning of Rwanda. John Bosco will showcase efforts underway, including the use of geospatial data, small area estimation, and big data related initiative for the VNRs. Also accompanied him is Jean-Claude Irimenzi from the acting director of statistical method research and publication from National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda. The floor is yours, Jean Bosco.
Thank you, Yonge, and colleagues. Good afternoon or good morning. On Rwanda side, we are talking about the Rwanda Innovative Data Source for SDGs, monitoring and VNR preparation. Next. So just as introducing, I wanted just to show briefly our Rwandan Development Planning Framework, because we have integrated also SDGs and it's integrated in our Vision 2050 and also the midterm strategy of NST1, where it's also embedded in the sector strategic plans and also district development plans, which contribute to the midterm strategy of the country. And also every year we monitor being at sector level, district level, where we are. Next. Okay, just here it was to show how SDGs indicators are considered in our national strategic for transformation in 2017-2024 in economic, because it's divided into 3 areas plus also cost-cutting areas, in economic transformation, social transformation, transformation governance pillars, and others. Next. Then there's our capacity. So on indicators we found applicable to Rwanda was 199, and mostly the indicators that are available were 125 indicators from surveys, censuses, and administrative systems. So for those 74 indicators, we found that their values can be obtained from different sources, traditional sources. But those ones we've not, lastly we find that the country has had to explore different potential sources, including big data analytics to fill the gaps. Next. So the challenges we faced in the previous VNR, maybe to discuss and to show what we have done to make sure that we improve the status, the gap between the ambition of SDGs and available resources. We know that they require the resources, both also not only financial only, but also human. At the beginning, most of the countries, like also Rwanda, we had an issue in the clarity of the methodology and the measurement on the different SDG indicators. Another issue we were experiencing at the time was also the capacity to produce the required data for effective monitoring. There was also lack of enough resources to conduct surveys and censuses required to fill the gaps, and also correction frequencies, because depending on the production timing was really, when you are reporting, you are finding there are some even evaluation or assessment you could be doing when we had to produce them. The timing we planned, it's 3 years, but the frequency is also affecting the data, the gaps on data. There was also lack of disaggregated data at many levels possible. Next. There was also, under the reforms, after noticing the gaps, because now we have elaborated and costed the National Strategy for Development of Statistics, NSDS-3, covering the period of 2019-2020 fiscal year to 2023-2024, where we started even implementing some of the initiatives and programs identified to make sure that we bridge the gaps, not only on SDGs only, because we are also, this plan is covering also other national and the regional and international commitments, including African Union 2063 and also African 2063 also data. Rwanda also created a platform to disseminate the SDGs progress and reports, because previously we would find the data here and there, but having a centralized system helps also stakeholders, being planners, also to have information at the same place and to catch up to propose some interventions to bridge the gaps in terms of progressing on SDGs implementation. There's also mapping and assessing all the SDGs indicators in the midterm strategies, NST1, sector strategic plan, and also district development plans to see the way if their frame are just responding to SDGs indicators. There was also to bridge the gap on data disaggregation, where National Institute of Statistics of Rwanda introduced the use of technology, mobiles, and also tablets in data collection, where the questionnaire disaggregate all the data, and the collection and also reporting becomes very easy compared to the traditional methods of papers and questionnaires, hard copies, which really helped improving. Next. The Rwanda also was nominated to host the Regional Hub for Big Data and Data Science in Africa 2020. Directly, the National Institute created the Department of Big Data and the Revolution at NISA. Currently, it has 13 staff. NISA also is building staff capacity in machine learning using R and Python. programming languages, the analysis of satellite image for classification and features extraction, example, satellite imaging, to monitor drought, to respond on SDG 2.1 or 9.1, to look at also proportion of the rural population who lives within 2 kilometers, and the others other initiatives we are conducting. Next. And now ISAR also has acquired the license. Sorry, go back to the, okay. And ISAR also acquired the license satellite imagery they subscribe on digital global imagery with high resolution to make sure that it is census is mapping, land use, agriculture, etc., and other applications. Rwanda also created the Rwanda Space Agents, mandated to regulate and coordinate all space activities in the country, while also creating environment that encourages entrepreneurial and also industrial development. There's also partnership with other stakeholders on data sciences, capacity building, including the UK Office of National Statistics, UNECA, higher learning institutions such as the University of Rwanda, AIMS, and as well Carnegie Mellon University, and also Ines University of Ingeri. Next. So the requirements to report on SDGs indicators, no census surveys conducted at national level. So these ones before any institutions or any organization is conducting censuses at national sector level, we make sure that those indicators are also included to make sure that we bridge the gaps. There is also requirement to sector working groups. As previously in the presentation I had last time, we showcased how Rwanda is coordinating with the development partners and how they do planning together on activities and putting also the resources together to make sure that we speed up the implementation of SDGs. And also under this one, there is also the forward-looking, the backward-looking and forward-looking, where one is planning, the other one is looking at the implementation, and also they report on progress on those indicators at each sector level, which also is the availability of data and also reflect the progress and the trend of implementation. So after that, we will continuously collaborate and increase partnership to mobilize funds for reaching statistical capacity and also implementing projects and programs that help the country to achieve the SDGs project. And this time it is very, very critical because of COVID and others. Resources, mobilization and partnership could handle that issue. Next. So the way forward is, as I said, the resources. We have costed the NSDS 3 to see what is requiring to us. The government also has started investing heavily to make sure that all the information required are available, but we are also partnering with other partners to make sure that we bridge the data gaps through surveys, sensors, spatial data, administrative data, big data, and citizen-generated data. There's also development of sounding methodology. We use big data, as you know, in many countries. This big data and data science is already a new area where all countries are trying to make sure that they collect data and also putting in place systems to review and validate certain the rationality of this data. There's also capacity continuation of capacity building of staff, big data and analysis techniques to make sure that these sources and the tools and also the opportunities you have as Rwanda is leveraged on to meet to bridge these gaps highlighted above. Next, I think that's at the end of my presentation. Thank you. So we'll be happy to respond to any request. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John Bosco. It's very exciting to see there's so many initiatives under reforms. from Rwanda on using new data sources, improve current existing data sources on SDG monitoring. So there's actually a lot of good examples that we probably will invite in the future to talk about some of the detailed examples and that's how can this be helpful for other countries. So maybe I'll have a quick question from the chat. Let me just see. So there's a question from Emily Vargas saying, have you developed a cross-cutting database for early childhood development using indicators from various SDGs? It's very specific on childhood indicators.
My colleague John Claude can intervene because as a detail is somebody who works on this on day-to-day basis.
Yeah, please, John Claude.
Yes, thank you very much. The question regarding the development of cross-cutting database for early childhood development using indicators from various SDGs. Okay, we have not yet developed this database, but we are collaborating with UNICEF. We have a project towards the development of this database for childhood development, and we are in the process of designing terms of references. Actually, we are in the process of recruiting an expert to develop this database, and we hope that by the end of this year, we should be having a very good database with children development indicators. Back to you.
Thank you. And then there's a comment, and also a question on how your new spatial agency will be involved in the VNR process from Javier.
So the Rwanda Space Agencies is acquiring, is even coordinating all the initiatives using the data science, the spatial information, because they have all the tools. They are building the capacity to coordinate all the initiatives. They have also experts that will be supporting all the sectors, which mean supporting the sectors as SDGs is also domesticated. They will be supporting the implementation, the also availability of data and different also initiatives to make sure that the monitoring is done properly and the decision making is made on time basis. Thank you.
Thank you. I also see a hands up from Ruba. So we'll unmute you, Ruba. Yeah, please speak. Ruba, do you have your questions? Okay. So maybe there's one more question, so then we'll move on to the next presenters. So there's a question on what advice would you give to a country wanting to conduct their VNR? Which department should lead the process?
So the advice I could provide personally is involvement. Coordination of National Statistic Office is paramount because they guide on methodology. Sometimes when you go to sectors, methodology, calculations, and the data requirements, they don't have them, but National Statistic Office, they are really paramount to coordinate the activities, and also involvement of stakeholders is really good because it gives you ideas, interpretation on the data. Actually, the story behind is from those stakeholders. When we talk about people with disabilities, we talk about women, we talk about children, we talk about youth, all of this, approaching them, the civil society, private sector, development partners, really it helps us to get a complete picture of what we are talking about. It also gives the lessons on what the country can focus on in the future to make sure that we implement sustainably the interventions we are making. Thank you.
Thank you so much for answering all the questions. Thank you, Jean-Claude and John Bosco. So we will move on to our next presenters, which is Mr. Leonardo Gonzalez from Chile. Mr. Leonardo Gonzalez is the Deputy Technical Director of the National Institute of Statistical Chile. He will focus on innovative data sources for SDG monitoring and good practice on national experience on improving data to support the VNRs. Over to you, Leonardo.
Thank you, John Lee, for the presentation and for having the opportunity to be here with you. Good morning, good afternoon, good night to each of you. First, we can start with the first slide, please. I will explain the concept related on how we organize the institutionality to follow and implement the 2030 agenda. In 2015, Chile adopted the 2030 agenda, and in 2016, the government created by law the National Council that is here for the implementation of the agenda, chaired by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and which also included the Ministry of Economy, the Ministry of Environment, and the Ministry of Social Development and Family. Among the main milestone of the initial period of implementation of the work coordination, we can mention the generation of the social, economic, and environmental working groups that depend on the cross-sector group, coordinated by the Ministry of Social Development as the technical secretariat, and the creation of the government network for the 2030 agenda. The cross-sector group oversees to facilitate the management of the 2030 agenda in the country, and is integrated by the subsecretariats from the Ministry of the National Council. So it's the political instance have an important role to assure the political commitment with the agenda. Also, the government network is made up of participants from all interesting ministry and state entities related to the implementation of the agenda. And in addition to a plan of the dissemination, dialogue, and participation at the national and regional level with representatives of different sectors. The last milestone in relation to the SDG institutionality was that in January of the last year, the National Statistical Institute, our institution, take the coordination of the SDG sectoral technical group indicators, whose main function is to compilate the country statistical information for the 231 indicators, following up and monitoring of the United Nations agenda, as well as giving the technical support for other institutions for the proposal of additional indicators in our country, and at the same time to validate the calculation of the different indicators that we have to follow in this context. We provide this technical support for the compilation of the indicator. We communicated with the national network to ask to the different institutions for the data required to follow up this agenda. Please, next slide. Chile has completed 2 voluntary national reviews, whose objective is to evaluate the challenge and advances of the countries in the implementation of the 2030 agenda. The first one was presented in 2017, so to reaffirm the integral and divisible, universal and non-hierarchical nature of the SDG indicators, which consider the 2030 agenda of shared responsibility between the state, civil society, and economic agents for sustainable development. And the second report was presented in 2019, and in which we emphasizing not only the action carried out by the government, but also highlighting the examples of initiatives developed by the private sector and civil society. And in these two voluntary national reviews, it's very important to mention that both reports were accompanied by the statistical annex that contained all the SDG indicators available for our country. Next slide, please. Here we have the role achieving the SDG indicator related with our institution. We have the time lapse. The first one milestone is that in 2016, we served on the National Council for Implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development as technical advisor to the Council and Technical Secretariat. In the same year, we advised the President of the Republic on the implementation and follow-up of the agenda, and we serve as a coordinating body for government entities, civil society, private sector, academia, and international organization, among other actors. In 2017, 2018, we headed the validation of the indicator for the 2030 agenda, and last year, as we said previously, we formally assumed the coordination of the sectoral group on SDG indicators. I will come back to this point in the next slide, please. Here we have a sectoral working group on SDG indicators. The objective is to compile the country's statistical information for these 251 indicators for the follow-up and monitoring the United Nations 2030 agenda, and provide technical assistance to institutions for the proposal of additional indicators for Chile. The members institution is the INE, our institution as a coordinator since January of last year. And also we have the presence of Ministry of Social Development and Family, Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Environment, and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This activity will carry out in two main lines of work, which are the first one, to report an annual update of the SDG indicator with a special emphasis on the delivery of data to the Technical Secretariat for the preparation of follow-up reports, such as voluntary national representation. And on the other hand, the second line of work seeks to advance in the definition of a collection program for pending official indicators and or additional indicator works that must be carried out with the institution of the 2030 agenda. Please, next slide. Here we have the organization of these three groups, the sectional group on indicators. Under this working group, 3 subcommittees were created, and all the different indicators were distributed among them. Each indicator was subsequently assigned to corresponding ministry, which was responsible for its calculation. So we follow this work, we give technical assistance, but each ministry have to be responsible for its calculation. Next slide, please. Here we have the work related with the milestone regarding with the voluntary national report. It's important to mention that as a country, we are working on the third voluntary national reviews, and we are working in the process of update the different indicators. Last year in June, we carried out a collection process of the indicator for the COVID report, which was used to test a new collection system proposed by our institution. This second report contained 154 the second report contained 134 indicators. The COVID was smaller because it was concentrated it was a special report regarding the COVID impact on different indicators. But that work, we as an institution implemented a new system to compile the indicators. And the previous report, we used it like a very not a integrated system. We use it a lot of Excel to change information with the different institutions, but we are now using an integrated system, an informatic system that we will show you in the next slide, please. We implemented last year this system as a pilot project for the indicator compilation. The objective of this system is to provide database for the registration and updating of all SDG indicators, which allow us to maintaining and the reference integrity of the information provided by the informants. Sometimes it's difficult to like coordinate how the different institutions have to give us the information. So we implemented this system. This information collection system was developed in the Service Solution Software, which is a system from the World Bank, and which is using in our institution from several years from now. For this, a self-applied questionnaire was shown using a Kawi collection method technology, and we show it. An important update is that it showed the collection statistical data and metadata associated with the SDG indicator, as well as the updating the data previously delivered by each institution, which allow us to like reduce the information that the other institutions have to provide if they are not have substantial updated to inform. This was an important contribution because allow us to follow the previous response and just update those with new information. Here in the slide you have like the structure that we have in the system. Please, the next slide. The main finding of the pilot project that we implemented the last year and we are now using to collect the different indicator of the SDG agenda, we found some points of improvement in data collection. We optimized tasks associated with our institution role as a final validator. We add indicator spreadsheet and associated data to a regular delivery of information, especially when there are no official sources for confirmation. And we improve the training process for the use of Service Solution Software collection system. And we create working groups for indicators that had not been reported. So this software is very, this way to organize the work of collecting the data allows us to follow easily the different information that the other institution give us and provide our mission as a technical support for the calculation. And it was a really good improvement in the process of integrate the information that we give to the official institution for the technical secretariat to provide the voluntary national reviews. So next slide, please. I will also mention this work that we are participating is the Burba pilot project that is proposed by the United Nations Habitat and the European Commission. The Burba pilot project is presented as an opportunity for countries to measure, compare, and analyze urban and rural areas, including population, density, and associated buildings in grids of square kilometers based on maps. With the pilot project, SDGs, these three SDGs, 11.2.1, 11.3.1, and 11.7.1 can be calculated in the country for the first time, which enables the national gap to be narrowed, and thus it meets the challenge and goals of the 2030 agenda. This project highlights the importance of international cooperation to develop methodologies to measure those missing indicators of the SDG agenda. In this case, we use geospatial information to build these 3 SDG indicators, and we will have this. We will leave the slide. We have a more slide available if you want to more information of this project. But it's a clearly example about the importance between the related with the cooperation between international organization and National Statistical Office to produce more indicators that are not available and that provide information to follow the agenda. These are the indicators that we have calculated based in this pilot project. This first indicator, proportion of population with convenient access to public transport. Next slide, please. This another one related with ratio of land consumption rate of population growth rate. Next one, please. Next one. And the average share of built-up area of city that is open space for public use for all by sex, age, and person with disabilities. And all these indicators are calculated using information, public space information. So it's a good advance considering to follow this gap related with those indicators that don't have any information available. And that's it, our presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm available to ask to answer any question.
Thank you so much, Leonardo. Thank you for sharing the rich experience of Chile on continually improving the SDG monitoring using different approach, using new methodologies, improving existing process. So it's a lot of information that we can learn from. So thank you so much for sharing this experience. Now we'll go to the questions. I think this one is a comment. Now the questions. Then there's some from the registration. We have some questions. So we will probably ask you first, Leonardo, because you're still on the screen. So what are the challenges and the limitations you have encountered when collecting and using data for the preparation of the VNR? How has the monitoring process improved from the past VNR process? This is one question we received from the registration.
Thank you, Janji. We face different challenge. For example, the first one is in terms of participation of the different institutions and the appropriation, properly appropriation of the agenda. It's very important to be sure that to have the political commitment, considering the collection of information and the follow-up of the agenda. That is the very basis that you have to ensure to be a successful process. In terms of systematization, there has been constant challenge related to how to systematize information from different institutions, and at the same time of a different nature. And information is from different nature, from different institutions. At the beginning, we started by compiling through Excel files, and it was a not very ordered process. And after that, the data compilation process had been ordered and systematized using information using the, IT systems. There are also a challenge linked to developing working relationship with counterparts over time, and also different authorities to prioritize this work that's somewhat relevant. Regarding to limitations, methodologies still need to be developed to be able to measure missing indicators. That is a global challenge. I think that is probably the best strategy to authorities like to build strategic alliance with different institutions to develop these methodologies. There is also a lack of resources to develop all indicators and all the disaggregations that the SDG asks for us. Sometimes it's difficult, for example, to develop graded thematic statistics related with disaggregated data. And in that sense, it's very important to deal with this limitation using, for example, administrative records of another techniques like a small area estimation that could allow us to disaggregate, produce a more disaggregated data. Regarding with the improvement, we have planning activities and coordinated with the rest of the institution related with the SDG agenda. That is a very important issue. We have development and monitoring system that make it possible to follow up on previous responses. And we still have the challenge of better and more integrated use of administrative records to produce more indicators for this agenda.
Thank you so much. Now we have all the panel member back, so we will start the Q&A session. Open discussion. So let me see if any question online. Okay, then I will pick a few questions from the registration. So I will maybe ask Catherine, and do you have any plan to improve data collection and analysis for VNRs in the future?
Yeah, we do. It's not quite data collection by Statistics Canada, but it's rather data finding. StatsCan is a big organization with over 100 statistical program, but other departments are also data provider or data producer. So we'd like to enhance our partnership with both our internal subject matter and our external subject matter from other departments in order to identify new data source that could be used to report on the SDG. Also, we've created a tool to assess the quality of non-official data, and we've already used it, and the conversation that comes out of going through that evaluation tool with other data producer are very, very rich. And we're hoping that more and more people will learn about that tool and will increase our partnership for increasing also our data reporting on the SDG. In terms of analytical work, I think I touched on it a little bit. We're finishing a series of infographics, one for each goal, and we're using your model, like the template that you've provided to do so. We're also working on the interdependency of the various framework we have in Canada. We have various framework on the SDG theme. And for the future, we're thinking about two very interesting projects. We'd like to build an interactive dashboard that would illustrate progress, but through different lenses. Like, for example, for social statistics, we could have progress by sex or by age group. For economic statistics, we could look at progress by industries. And we're also, like many others have done it already, we'd like to turn our attention toward the localization of the SDG and use geospatial information to see how detailed we can bring in SDG indicators.
Thank you so much. And then we'll maybe ask John Bosco a question. So, what are the lessons learned from your first VNR that you're taking forward in your current process? What recommendations in terms of data from the past VNR are you working towards now?
I think the lesson learned was that having a technical committee at the national level, representative of different sectors, and also having on board the other stakeholders is really very helpful, because having the focal person of each sector, especially the the reader or the director generals in charge of planning and also M&E was really very helpful because they had all the information necessary and even the story behind, but also involving other stakeholders, non-government actors. It is helpful because some also helps to know the story behind the statistics about the data available. Plus also having the development partners, they have conducted different assessment on different aspects. Like if we talk about women, UN women who are also supporting, talk about child, you look at UNICEF. So having all the partners, stakeholders involved really is helpful to quality assure whatever interpretation people are working. And even the quality of the report itself, the improvement and the quality depends on all the aspects, those aspects I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your excellent response. So this is a question for all the panelists. So maybe we'll start with Catherine. What should the role for National Statistical Office be in the VNR process?
You know, sometimes, at least in Canada, policy department can lean toward focusing more strongly on the good news. So NSO, we have the statistical expertise to add significant value and credibility to VNR because we provide an unbiased statistical information. So by widening our attention to the good and also the bad, the data that NSO provides on SDG can act as a road sign along the SDG journey. The data signal if a policy is not working, if there's a policy gap, of course, where progress is being made as well. So acting as partner for the preparation of VNR, and I think partner is a key word here, we can tell a honest story of the country's successes and struggle and steer our action in the right direction.
Thank you. So I will ask the same question, maybe first to Leonardo. So what should the role for NSO be in the VNR process?
Thank you for the question. I think that our institution has to provide the technical support related for the compiling process and at the same time of how we are calculating each indicator. That is important related with what we have to be sure that the figures that we are presented are methodologically speaking robust and that the different institutions can have the support of the National Statistical Office to calculate it and to develop more data related with the missing data that we still have with the agenda. Also, we have we could have an important role related with storytelling with data. That is how we tell what the data tell us related with the evolution and the projection. Was very interesting what Canada showed, how they projected how we are going and how we will be in some years in the future. So that we have a very interesting role in that process.
Thank you very much, Leonardo. So John Bosco, since you're from Minister of Planning, Finance, and so it's a different role. So can you maybe also answer the question, what the NSO's roles in your process?
So the role of our National Statistics Office is coordination, putting in place the systems, scientifically approved, with appropriate methodology, publish statistic data required to assess the development, also to support the development agenda of our country. Because whatever we do, planning, it needs to be evidence-based. The reason why our statistic office is paramount. Whatever we do in Rwanda, in all the sectors at local level, so it helps us to compare the successes and also the weakness, the progress you are making, or the gaps you are having in different areas, so that we improve. We have seen that the ambition of Rwanda is to become a middle income country in 2030 and also a high income country in 2050. So reaching that level, you need really a strong statistic office that is guiding evidence on whatever we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I say a question to Leonardo. So considering the changes introduced in Chile's public data ways of work and SDG governance, which data-related improvements could we expect to find in your country's third VNRs? This is from Javier from CIPE.
Thank you for the question. We are working right now in the collection data for that report. We already have implemented this informatic system to provide to compile the information from the different institutions. We also hope to incorporate these 3 indicators that we are developing in the context of the GURBA pilot project that are related with these 3 indicators: 11.2.1, 11.3.1, 11.7.1. We expect to introduce that in our report. Also, we are working to try to give more special data to disaggregate data that are related with new cooperation projects. But we will tell you more when we finish this work, this compilation work.
Thank you for sharing the answer. So this is perhaps the last round of question to our panelists. To what extent, how could we as a CSO effectively and meaningfully contribute and participate in the VNR process? So maybe I'll ask Catherine first.
CSO is civil society, right?
Yeah, civil society organization.
So we're not the lead. It's there's a policy department that is the lead for writing the VNR. So I cannot talk a lot about it. I don't know everything, but I think their goal is to have a all of society approach. So they will try to have the point of view of course, the different departments that are doing the policies to achieve the SDG, but also to member of the society. And like in Canada, we have indigenous population. I think they would have to have their view included, and also different civil society.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe I'll pass to John Bosco.
Thank you. Civil society is involved in whatever we are doing because we have they have an umbrella where if you are interested to those focusing on education, we have their umbrella. So engaging them is very easy, as you discussed previously. They participate in our planning at sectoral level. When you talk about agriculture, education, all of them, we have them on board. So when we are reporting, some of them have conducted already some assessment, different level. So the involvement, even when we started the reporting on the second VNR, we started engaging them. But even at the end, until they shared even their opinion on different aspects. But also when the report will be under finalization, we discuss with them. We organize a workshop. We discuss with them, also virtual calls, and also we share with them the report so that they comment on it as well. And their comments also are taken into consideration. Because so for us, we work together whatever we are doing, because without them as well, because they speak for those that have not maybe got the possibility to talk about themselves. So they represent a given part of the society. That's why we always engage them so that whatever they raise, it's taken into consideration for our benefit and for the citizen. Because our economy, whatever we are doing, it's for the benefit of citizens. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your excellent answers. I will ask the same question to Leonardo.
Thank you. For us, it's very important civil society point of view, because they have to be part of the agenda. In this cross-sector group, which the Ministry of Social Development is the technical secretariat, and we work with the national network agenda. We coordinated last year some regional dialogues with the civil society, so that we are as institution, not as institutionality of the SDG agenda, we are incorporating the civil society view regarding with the 2030 agenda. So that is how we are trying to incorporate them to this process.
Thank you so much. I also want to use this opportunity to announce that there's actually 2 events related to citizen general data for policymaking. And it's a physical event during the Statistical Commission. One is on 24th of February in the afternoon. It's part of the Friday seminar on innovations. So the whole afternoon we will dedicate to citizen data. And then we have another interactive event on 1st of March in Ford Foundation. Also, if you happen to come to New York for the Statistical Commission, so I can encourage you to join both of the events related to citizen data. And also another related event on small areas estimation on e-learning will also take place this Friday, I think on the 17th of Friday. You can find all this information on the side event website. So with that, I would like to thank all our panelists and the participants for joining us today. We're always very excited to discuss the way in which VNRs can be more evidence-based and how country improving their data for advancing the SDGs. So please note that a recording of this event and the presentation will be made available on the meeting website. We are providing the link in the chat. Also, we will really appreciate your feedback on today's event. So please say a super short survey. Just take you probably a minute for you to fill out. We'll post the link in the chat. So we really appreciate your response, which can help us to improve our future events. So the link is posted. So thank you again. So we really look forward to seeing you soon at the Statistical Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you so much for your presentations. We really appreciate it. It was excellent.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.